So, you want to use earplugs to protect your hearing? Great. But you also want crystal clear audio from your Bluetooth communications unit? Well, here's a solution. I've been wearing Ultimate Ear Protection moulded earplugs for many years now, and I never ride without them. They do a great job of filtering out the harmful noise while also allowing me to hear ambient sounds around me, from the bike to cars, other people talking, ambulances, the full gamut. But when I was using comms, I found that I was having to turn the volume up so that I could hear it clearer over the top of other noise, and surely that defeats the object. So when I'm using Bluetooth comms, I now use the Ultimate Ear Protection SoundEars Pros. These are essentially the same medical grade silicone custom molded earplugs that offer 31 decibels of noise isolation, but they also include high quality speakers. Molded into the plugs are a pair of dual balanced armature drivers with a tuned vent subwoofer and internal Accupass acoustic crossover. So what does that mean? Well, to be honest, I don't really know. All I know is that they sound awesome. The clarity of sound is amazing, and they have a bass response that you wouldn't expect from a driver of this size. So why use these? Well, as I mentioned earlier, you get the same 31 decibels of noise isolation, which helps cut down those harmful frequencies. It means that the wind noise around your helmet and all that sort of stuff is cut out, but you get very clear audio from whatever device it is that you're using. And what it enables you to do is have that audio turned right down to a very low level, but still hear it very clearly. But Tony, how do I connect it to my Bluetooth comms unit, I hear you ask? Well, there are a few options available. It won't work with all of them because you do need the ability to connect with a 3.5mm jack. Now, the good news is if you're a Cardo user, all of their comms units connect the internal speakers to the unit via 3.5mm jack, which makes things really easy. There are two choices for you. Number one is to disconnect the speakers that are already in your helmet, thus freeing up the 3.5mm connector. Then you can just plug the SoundEars into that, pop them in your ears, put the helmet on, and away you go. You can leave those speakers in place, or as I've done with this helmet is I've taken those speakers out and I just have the connector accessible underneath, so I can plug the SoundEars into it when I want to use them. And if I'm not using comms, then I'll just put my squeegees in and ride with the helmet as it is. Option two is to use a simple headphone splitter, something you can pick up on Amazon, just a splitter that's got a one male plug and a two female plugs. Disconnect the speakers that you've got in your helmet already, plug that male plug into the setting in here, and then you've got two spare ports, one that you can plug these speakers back into and another one that you can use for your SoundEars. That way you can switch between the two systems if you want to do that. If you're a Sena user, there are still some options, but they are a little bit more limited. The 50S, for example, does have an auxiliary 3.5mm headphone jack in the mount that goes onto the side of the helmet. You just simply plug your SoundEars into that and you've got the audio through those, and that disengages the speakers that are in the helmet. So that's a really easy way to switch between the two. You just plug it in and away you go. If you don't want to use those, you've got nothing to change inside the helmet. The problem arises when you start looking at some of the other Sena units, because the headphone connectors for those in all of their kits is a proprietary plug for them. They don't use a 3.5mm jack. So unless you're a whiz with electronics, changing the plugs on those is impossible, and that leaves you with limited choice. This works well, but anything else not so good. And that's also the same for integrated comms units. Again, whether that is Sena driven or Cardo driven, because they are in the helmet, you don't have that same connections. So yeah, you are a little bit limited, but there are options out there. There is an option if you want to have the SoundEars spec'd with a USB-C connector rather than a 3.5mm jack. You also have a choice of cable length, the standard one being 1.4 meters, but there is also a 50cm option that you can select in the drop down menus on their website. There's also a choice of connectors. You can either have a straight connector or a right angle connector, but on the shorter cable, your option is only for straight. Obviously, these can be used with any other device that has a 3.5mm jack headphone output, whether that's a phone or an iPod, if they still exist, or any other piece of audio equipment. You can still use these. And obviously, as I said before, you can have these spec'd with the USB-C connector as well, which I know is probably going to work with a lot of Android phones and potentially the new iPhones. At £289 a set, these are a bit of an investment, but trust me, for great sound quality and comfort with the noise isolation for long days out on the bike or multi-day trips, they're worth it. I'll just briefly cover off what you get in the kit. So inside your carry case, you have your SoundEars Pro. I've got the short cable here with an extension, which has got the right angled plug on it. You also get a tube of ear comfort gel, very important to make sure they are comfortable inside your ear. You get a little spiky thing here that you can clean out the ports should you get any residue or wax inside those. Also in the case, you get the instructions and a couple of alcohol wipes to help keep the earplugs clean.